Hey there, mathletes. Well, today we are going to continue in these polar equations, or with these polar equations, and now we're going to start graphing some curves. And there are a lot of different types of curves that we can do for these, but we're going to pretty much just do one type, or actually two. The first one we talked about at the beginning of 9.1, that was just r equals 1, r equals 3, r equals 5. That just graphs a circle with this number as its radius. So we are right here for r equals 1. So r equals 3, just circle of radius 3. 1, 2, 3. So just draw your little circle. Basically, you just have to trace it. And there you go. So not a whole lot to it. So just circles and rows curves. So rows curves, they have one of two forms. Excuse me. So the first one being r equals a times cosine of n theta. And then the second one, r equals a sine. Excuse me again. So they're practically the same, just one's cosine, the other one's sine. So for either one of these, if the n is odd, so the number in front of the theta, if that is odd, then the curve is going to have n petals. But if that coefficient is even, then it's going to have 2n petals. So you just double it, and that would tell you how many petals it has. So cosine curves, we kind of like them a little bit better because their curves, or the first petal, is going to start and be centered on n, comma 0. So what that means is that the first petal is centered, like the entire petal is centered on theta equals 0. And that would be for all your cosine rows curves. That first one's always going to be centered right on the 0. So somewhere in here, you're going to be drawing a petal. Sine curves, they technically start right at the pole. So right at 0, 0. So you got to do something a little bit different to tell you like where it's going to be centered. So we'll get to that in a moment. So let's go ahead and graph this first one. R equals 4 cosine of 3 theta. So your n is 3. So it's odd. So it has 3 petals. So again, your first one is centered right on theta equals 0. So your petal is going to be in here. The number in front, the 4, that tells you like how far out you're going to go, or how far out the petal goes. So it's going to go all the way out to the 4th ring, and then back to the origin. So there's your first petal. So it hits the 4th ring. So now you have 2 more. Well, since the rows curves, the petals are always equally spaced all the way around. So if you have 3 petals, if you take 360 degrees and divide it by 3, that means that each petal is spaced out 120 degrees apart. So the first one was at 0, the next one's at 120, and then the third one would be at 240. So there are your other 2 petals. Okay, in the next video we'll look at for the sine rows curves and see how to deal with those.